Well, welcome back, and I've been looking forward. It's been a long time since we've had Frank Turek back with us. He is the founder and the president of the Christian apologetics ministry, crossexamine.org. And Frank's quite a guy. We've been praying for him. He was a very close friend of Charlie Kirk. He was there the day that he was assassinated. And he's joining us today to talk about Charlie's last book called The Stop in the Name of God: Why Honoring the Sabbath Will Transform Your Life. He does have a website, 45books.com, and there's a picture of the cover of the book there, and also there's a picture of the website. Frank, good to see you, friend. How are you?
Hey, Curry, thanks for having me on. This book, by the way, is the last thing Charlie did in terms of a book, and I had the opportunity to edit it. I didn't have to edit much. The young man was brilliant. And it's not just a book about the Sabbath. I know that's the title of it. That's the focus of it. But it's also a book that deals with evidence for the Christian faith. So it's an apologetics book as well. First couple of chapters, he's talking about evidence for God. So it's a little bit broader than the title suggests. So it's a very good read. And Kirk wrote the foreword to it, of course, after Charlie's martyrdom. And if you can get through that without crying, I don't know how you do that.
I don't know either. Frank, how are you doing? It's been 5 months you were there, very much there. And I'm not over it. A lot of people aren't over it. How are you doing, friend?
Well, you know, every day I wake up, first thing I think about is Charlie. Last thing I think about before I go to bed is Charlie, but that's to be expected. And what we have to do is press on. Charlie, of course, is with the Lord now, and the struggle continues down here. And he wanted Erica to take the reins, and if anything ever happened to him, and it did. A couple of things that it's done, in my mind anyway, is it shows us the immensity of evil up close. And it also makes eternity a lot more important all of a sudden. Because Perry, you and I, and you just had Robert Jeffress on, I mean, he was just mentioning, I'm going to be checking out of here in the next decade or two. And even the younger viewers watching right now, we're more certain that we're all going to be stepping into eternity more certain than we are when Jesus is going to come back and end the whole thing. So regardless of when Jesus is coming back, you're going out. So you better make sure that you have repented and accepted what Christ has done to pay for your sins.
Frank, do we understand evil?
Well, when it happens, in my life anyway, because I've written a lot about evil, it makes it just more real. I don't know if the general public experiences that kind of evil up close very often, thankfully. They do in other countries. You know, there's about 50 Charlie Kirks being killed every day in Nigeria right now. But it certainly brings home the fact that there is a spiritual war out there. There are things that are evil. And if there are things that are evil, and murder obviously is evil, there must be a standard of good. Otherwise, you couldn't call murder evil. It would just be something that you didn't like. It would be a preference. So unless God exists as the standard of good, you can't even call murder evil, not objectively. But we all know it is objectively wrong. It's objectively evil. Therefore, God must exist.
You were very close to Charlie. You worked with him for a long time. How long did you guys work together before all this?
6 years ago, January, well, a little over 6 years ago, January 2020, he emailed our organization and he just said, I've been watching your videos and they've helped me out a lot. Here's what I do. I want to get to know you better. So he and I became fast friends. And especially this past summer, we spent a fair amount of time together. I went out to Phoenix on 4 occasions for he and I to sit down and talk about the most difficult questions we get as Christians on campus and how to better answer them. And so we would iron sharpens iron. We'd go back and forth, and we'd have other folks in the room with us. And then Charlie and I at night would go on these long walks around his neighborhood and just talk about all these different issues and how to refine our answers to get better at them. So that's why I was with him when he was murdered, because I had flown in 2 or 3 days before, and he and I were spending a couple of days together to get ready for the tour. And he said, "Hey, why don't you just come with me to the first event?" I was like, "Yeah, why not?" And so that's why I was with him.
Who was this young man? He seems to be so different in so many ways.
If Charlie was alive 250 years ago, he'd be normal. Okay? Because if you look at our founding fathers, that's what Charlie was like. He was like Thomas Jefferson or James Madison, right? He was brilliant, and he seemed more brilliant than, say, the average person today, because we're not educated like our founders were. We have too many distractions and too much misinformation that comes across our psyche, that we're not quite as sharp as the folks 250 years ago. But Charlie was way beyond his age in terms of maturity at 31 years old. And just to give you a sense of how insightful he was, the last walk we went on was 2 nights before he was murdered, September 8th, Monday night. We're walking through the streets near his home in Phoenix. And I said, "Charlie, let's talk about whatever you want to talk about." And the 3 subjects he wanted to talk about at length was Islam, especially related to government. Then secondly, the resurrection. What kind of evidence do we have of the resurrection? How can we give clear answers on it? And then thirdly, he was trying to figure out how he could get his generation to embrace marriage and children. Because if you saw the surveys after the election, Perry, it showed that men, particularly Trump voting men, were the number one objective in their life was to get married and have kids. But for the Trump voting women, it was like 5 or 6. And for the Harris voting women, it was 12 out of 13. Like, women were not interested in getting married and having kids. And Charlie was trying to figure out, how can I, as a man, encourage women in my generation to embrace marriage? And we didn't come up with an answer that night, because most of the ladies out there who are promoting that kind of message are career women themselves, right? So people could see the mild contradiction. You're telling me I ought to stay home and have kids, and yet you're out as a speaker and an influencer. So, how does that connect? And we may have inadvertently stumbled into an answer, tragically, 2 days later when he was murdered, because Erica Kirk has emerged as someone who is a woman that is a mom. And until her husband was murdered, was someone that was a full-time mom. So hopefully she can take up that mantle. But let me just go back to those 3 subjects we talked about: Islam related to government, the resurrection related to the church, and marriage related to family. Those are the 3 institutions that God created: government, family, and the church. And Charlie, when you look back at his life, those were the 3 major priorities in his life. How can I help people know Jesus? How can I ensure that we put a government in place that protects religious freedom and protects people from evil? And how can I get people to embrace God's mandate to be fruitful and multiply in a biological 2-parent family?
Wow. Did he ever share with you, Frank, like a transcendent calling from God to do what he was doing?
Well, I wonder if Charlie, we didn't talk much about a calling, and I'm probably in a minority position here, Perry, but I don't think Christians get called. I think Christians get gifted. Unless you're the Apostle Paul and you get some sort of, light from heaven that says, you need to do this, I'm calling you to do this. I think we're gifted to do what we do, and we can follow that gifting or not. In fact, I'm reminded of my mentor, Dr. Norman Geisler, when he was in seminary years ago. A chapel speaker came in once and he said, "I've been a missionary for 14 years and I was never called to go." And Geisler was sitting there going, "Good night. I've heard people that were called that didn't go, but I've never heard anyone who wasn't called and went." And then he said it again. He said, "I was a missionary for 14 years and I was never called to go. I was just commanded like the rest of you."
Wow.
And Geisler sat there and went, "Wow."
Wow.
You know, where God puts a period, let no man put a question mark. Do you need a calling to be a missionary? No. You're already commanded to be. Do you need a calling to tell somebody about Jesus? No, you're already commanded to do that. Do you need a calling to make disciples? No, you're already commanded to do that. Now, you might have certain gifting that makes it better for you or easier for you or help you to be more successful to do that. But no, Charlie and I didn't say we had callings on our lives. We had gifts maybe, and he here certainly had more gifts than I did. But we had gifts that we should use based on the commands God gave us, or to follow the commands God gave us. And one of the commands is to make disciples. And that's what this book helps people do. Stop in the name of God. And he's not making the case, by the way, Perry, that the Sabbath is obligatory. In fact, he has a section in there on 10 reasons why it is and 10 reasons why it isn't. You know, he's not trying to make the case that it's obligatory. He's simply saying that it is a wonderful command, whether it's obligatory for Christians or not. He doesn't get into that. What he's essentially saying is that it helps him focus on God, and there are so many benefits to it, and that it'll help you focus on your family as well, that we all ought to do it.
Wow. Your answer is just stunning. I got to process that, Frank. That was beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. I do want to come to the book, and I'll do that right after the book. Just a couple more questions. Since his death, his organization, under the leadership of his wife, has exploded. It's just gone unbelievable. And yet it's also being kicked out of campuses. Can you give us an update? Where do you think the organization's going?
Well, with Turek in charge, it's going in the right direction, I can tell you that, because, you know, she was an accomplished woman before she met Charlie. After they began having kids, she was staying home. But prior to that, she was not only Miss Arizona, but she also opened 2 businesses and successful businesses. One of them had to do with reading the Bible through in a year, and another was a clothing line. So she's someone that is accomplished in an organization already. Obviously, right now, with the grief and all the sinister attacks against her, which are just despicable. You know, if she cries too much, she's grieving too much. If she smiles too much, she's not grieving enough. She can't win in that regard with some people. Mm-hmm. And if you noticed that the apostles and Jesus call Satan a murderer, a liar, an accuser, and a slanderer who creates confusion. Notice we had a murderer on September 10th, and since then, we've had slander, accusations, lies, and confusion. Mm-hmm. This is called spiritual warfare. Of course, Satan is going to attack the largest evangelistic event in history, and that was Charlie's memorial service, where about 100 million people were watching live. There were over 200,000 people in the area when it happened, about 75 or 80,000 in the arena, and another arena next to us had another 30 or 40,000, and there's people all over the place outside. And then the last number I heard, as of November, 1.2 billion people around the world saw some of that memorial service, where it was just the gospel presentation one after another, not to mention the music. Of course, Satan is going to try and attack that, and that's what's happened.
All right, let me take a quick book. We're going to come back and talk about Charlie's last book called Stop in the Name of God. There's a picture of the cover of the book on the screen. It's available online. Check it out. Check out Frank's website, 45books.com. And there's pictures of that landing page. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Welcome back, and such an honor to have with us today Frank Turek, founder and the president of Christian Apologetic Ministry, crossexamine.org. By the way, that's your website. I apologize for that, Frank. So if you want to connect with Frank, the website is crossexamine.org. And then the website for the book, which is Charlie Kirk's last book, Stop in the Name of God, you can go to 45books.com and check that out there. Again, Frank, thank you for your time. We value it greatly. And please know, that day I saw you and been praying for you.
Oh, thank you, Perry. A lot of people have, so it's helped immensely.
I have no idea how you lived through that. I can't process it, how you lived through that. I want to come to the book quickly, and I do want to deal with the focus of the book of honoring the Sabbath and get a clear understanding here, because if I understand correctly, it's kind of saying, stop all this busyness. Take a day and stop. Mm-hmm. Am I oversimplifying it?
No, but Charlie goes obviously into a lot more detail, and he talks about how so many things are better when you do that. Not only your energy, but your sleep, your peace of mind. The idea that if you have an addiction to screens, and most people do, you break that as well, and you stop striving. In fact, here's the last page of the book. He says this: so while the world keeps sprinting, downloading, upgrading, and merging, let the people of God be the ones who pause, who breathe, who say, this day belongs to the Lord. Let us be the ones who shut it all down, not out of fear, but out of faith, not because we reject progress, but because we know that without margin, progress becomes a god, and gods without grace always destroy. And I think many of us can relate to always feeling that we have to be engaged, that we have to make a comment on social media whenever anything happens, within the first 10 minutes or something. You know, we have to know all things. We have to be virtue signaling all the time. We have to always be concerned that someone's trying to get a hold of us, or some new post is going to come out, or some new post has to have a certain amount of likes on it, and we need to track with all that, and I need to know this, that, and the other thing, 24/7, 365. No wonder we're stressed out. No wonder we're the anxious generation, as Jonathan Haidt from NYU put it in his book, Anxious Generation. This is the cure to that. This is the cure right here. And people will say, well, I don't have enough time to do it. Let me tell you that Charlie Kirk was the busiest person I've ever seen. If he had time to take a day off, you do. I mean, Charlie was raising $100 million plus a year. He was doing 2 or 3 hours of radio, TV every day. He had an organization with over 500 employees. He was personal friends with just about everybody you could imagine, and was trading phone calls and texts with the top politicians and top leaders in our country on a continual basis. And he was a husband and had 2 kids. And he was going to 25 campuses a semester. Now, if Charlie Kirk had time to rest, the rest of us do as well.
Yeah. You said the book is also a great book on apologetics.
It is.
Just give us a recap of that real quick.
Well, the first couple of chapters, he's talking about some of the scientific evidence that I have in my book. I don't have enough faith to be an atheist, and Stephen Meyer has in his book, The Return of the God Hypothesis. He's going through some of that evidence that we were created, and that the universe is designed and life is designed, I mean, to such an extreme degree, Perry. In fact, let me give you one example of this. The universe is so fine-tuned that if you were to change the expansion rate, or the expansion rate of the universe an infinitesimal amount, we wouldn't be here. In fact, Stephen Hawking said, if you were to change the expansion rate by 1 part in 1,000 million, the universe would have collapsed back on itself or never developed galaxies. If the gravitational force was different from the strong nuclear force by 1 part in 10 to the 40th power, we wouldn't exist. You say, what's 1 in 10? What's 1 in 10 to the 40th power? It's 1 part in 1 with 40 zeros following it. Mm-hmm. You say, Frank, I can't get my head around that number. Let me give you an illustration. Take the entire North American continent from Central America all the way to Greenland, the 51st state, okay? And stack it in dimes all the way to the moon. That's 238,000 miles. And then, Perry, Do that on a billion other North American continents. Stack it in dimes all the way to the moon. Then take all those piles, put them in one humongous pile, mark one dime red, mix it in, blindfold a friend, throw him on that pile, ask him to pick one dime at random. The chance he would pick that one marked red dime is 1 chance in 10 to the 40th power. That's how fine-tuned this universe is. And that's just one of dozens of parameters. Change any one of them, we don't exist. What does this all imply? There's a designer. And that designer created us in a way that after we fell, we need rest. And what Charlie is saying, you can't just strive all the time. You have to stop in the name of God and rest and worship.
Did you know he was writing this book?
Oh, yeah, he asked me to edit it.
Oh, okay. All right. So you guys worked together on it. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I read through it, and I didn't have to change much, let me tell you. 31 years old, he's brilliant.
There seems to be a genuine hunger for truth these days. I mean, we're seeing it in the culture, and Dr. Barna supports some of this, that young men are looking for truth and they're investigating faith. Did you guys sense that? Do you sense that, and did Charlie sense that?
Yes, and Charlie was a big part of that, by the way.
Yes.
Because he was telling young men, get some direction to your life. He and Jordan Peterson were two leaders in this world on that. Start finding the true purpose of life, which is to know God through Jesus and then to make him known, and then get a family, get some direction, get a good job, support your family, make a difference in your life, because too many people today feel rudderless. They don't know where to go or where to turn. You know where a lot of young men turned instead? And Charlie and I talked about this at length. They turned to video games, Perry.
Yeah.
And you know what video games are? They're just simulated adventure. Mm-hmm. Well, why don't you get rid of the simulated part and actually go on an adventure? It's called life. And start using your gifts to help people know Jesus and to make him known and to bring up a family in a culture that is opposed to that. That's an adventure. Boy. And Charlie was a big part of that. And we're trying to carry his legacy on now. Not just me, the whole TPUSA and a whole bunch of other folks are trying to do it as well, to try and point out that what Charlie was saying was good, right, and true. And the purpose and meaning of your life is not to just get a whole bunch of stuff and then die and become worm food. The purpose of your life is to know your Creator and to make your Creator known. So get busy.
How have you changed in the last 5 months?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, it's evil and eternity are much more real. And I'm trying to double down on what we were doing beforehand, which was just like Charlie going to college campuses and presenting the evidence that Christianity is true. So we've actually doubled our events this year. It starts this next week at Elon University here in North Carolina on February 10th, and February 11th we're at NC State, and February 12th we're at Northern Florida University in Jacksonville, and we've got about a little over a dozen of these scheduled this semester. In fact, I'm actually going back to Utah Valley University where Charlie was murdered. I'm going there on March 25th to speak there. I don't know how I'm going to react to being there, but we need to put a stake in the ground that Satan's not going to win, so we're going right back to the scene of the crime.
Wow. Are these events where you are welcome on campus? I would imagine they're more controlled environment.
Well, our events were always indoors because I give a presentation and usually with visuals. Charlie was doing these outdoor events, and they're much harder to control, obviously. And in the case of September 10th, it seems the university police that dropped the ball because they told Charlie's security team, oh, we got the roofs. No, they didn't. So as I see it, someone ought to be brought up on some sort of negligence charge because they didn't have the roofs. But our events are always indoors, and of course we have to have security now. Ever since Charlie, our events have to have security. because many of the people who say they're fighting for inclusion, tolerance, and diversity will not include or not tolerate you for holding a diverse view, we found. So we've got security, which of course drives up our costs, but our donors have stepped up to help with that. Now we have at least $10,000 in security costs every college we go to.
Is there a greater interest in having you come to these universities?
Yes, and it has to do with not just Charlie, but with, as you mentioned before, Perry, that people seem to be more interested in spiritual things in the sense that Bible sales are up, church attendance is up, people are trying to find truth out there. And as evil continues to arise all around us, people are starting to realize, yeah, if there's evil, there's got to be good, and if there's good, there's got to be God.
Yeah.
So, but I have noticed that since Charlie, there's been a shift in the questions. I used to get a lot more skeptical questions. Now I'm getting more questions about how can I bring my non-Christian friend to Jesus? In other words, the vibe has shifted from skepticism to evangelism on college campuses.
Wonderful. Frank, thank you for your time. And know that you're in our prayers. Let me say to our viewers and listeners, check out Frank's website, crossexamine.org. That's his website for his Christian apologetic ministry. Check out the book, Stop in the Name of God by Charlie Kirk, and you can go to 45books.com and check that out. I think you'll find it to be an inspirational read. Thank you, Fred. Let's stay connected, and please know you're being prayed for.
Thank you so much, Perry. It's helped quite a bit. Thank you.
All right, God bless.